If you have PTSD, at some point your safety has been compromised. Those words ring in my ear, they reverb in my soul, and they help me understand the life I live as a PTSD patient. She told me nobody ever asked. No one cared. They just threw a label on her because she wasn't speaking, instead of even asking or caring. They phoned in their responsibility for that day. She kept telling me, I just wanted someone to ask. I just wanted someone to give me a hug. She told me about the welts they found on her body, but that didn't stop the nightmare in her home. In my mind's eye, I remember her telling me about hiding in a closet. Those words haunt me too. She started her conversation with me with words that still haunt me. I was gifted with 2 parents, is what she told me. Thought about that for a little bit and wondered how she could use the word gift when those welts on her body that day came from one of those gifts. She showed me a picture and explained to me that the smile on her face tells a story of a beautiful little girl who just wanted to be asked a question. Are you okay? Can I give you a hug? She, by the way, is the person that I opened the quote with. If you have PTSD, at some point, your safety has been compromised. So when she told me she was gifted with 2 parents, I wondered, how many of you look at 2-parent homes and assume everything is okay and never ask? Her words haunt me. Nobody ever asked. She survived because, as she puts it, I had my basic needs met. I disagree with her. She might have had food, water, and shelter, but she suffered one of the worst things that can happen to a child: abandoned and neglected, even in the suburbs. Little Marley's mom, or her other gift, as it were, her own mental illness forced that little girl to raise herself without the love and the support of what we all assume happens in a 2-parent home. She told me at the time that she attempted to end her life in college. She told me about the 8 to 10 text messages she sent saying goodbye. She told me how much it meant to her that those people came running to help her. She told me those people asked, they cared, they hugged. Finally, someone asked. And today, a thriving adult Marlena comes to share with us how she got from abuse and neglect to a suicide attempt to where she is today. A pediatric ER nurse, a mental health advocate, the curator of a fantastic new project called Remaking Marley. She has hope in trauma and purpose in pain, and we're going to talk about all of it. Today, guys, I am so honored to welcome you to the podcast, my friend, Marlena.
Hi. Oh my goodness, Amy. I am pushing back my tears. That was so powerful to hear it. Not only from you, but just to hear it. I don't know, just thank you so much for the kind words, that validation, and how crazy it is to feel so connected to someone that I've never physically met, but I feel so much love between you and I. So thank you, Amy, for that.
It's hard to write. It's hard to hear. It's hard to read.
Yeah.
So you heard me read it, obviously. I heard me read it. The readers are hearing me read it. There is no reason that you should be alive. And so I want to start this podcast with hope. I want to know how you got from hiding in a closet from an abusive parent to a pediatric nurse with an unbelievable passion for mental health advocacy. Can you start for me after your suicide attempt in college and tell us what happened next?
Yeah.
After you sent those, I think you worded it to me, I sent 8 to 10 goodbye texts, and people came running. I didn't die that night. And I told you, don't tell me, because I want to know on the podcast what happened next.
Yeah, absolutely. I still struggle with this in my own healing journey about like what carries me, because even as a young child I kept thinking like, well, what's the point? Like, I'm going through all this, what's the point? I remember thinking that so young, like, why would anyone put a child through this? And you and I have talked about my struggle with like God and the universe and all that. So that's actually a good segue into what happened that day. So the week leading up until, I felt this emptiness and this lack of wanting or caring or doing or whatever. I just didn't, something was off. I kept hearing like this voice, like, you're not good enough. I kept hearing this like shutting down in my head and my body. And I told one of my roommates, who's my best friend, she's going to be my lifelong person, but I kept saying, every night, can you just make sure I go to bed? She said, yeah, of course. Like, we always do. I'm like, no, just like make sure I go to bed and you like see me go to bed. So I remember it because it was St. Patty's Day in college, which, as we all can assume, college, St. Patty's Day, well, like, what a big party. And I remember everyone was getting up at like 7 a.m. to go drink. And I was like, I'll catch up with you guys. It's not a big deal, whatever. And of course, they heard me and they went. And I remember being like, oh, no one cared to stay back for me. Go figure. I remember like hearing this in my head. And I kept being like, no, like, come on, just get up. Like, go see your friends. Got up, got ready. And I went to one of my friends' parties. I remember sitting on the roof and I remember being like, I don't care about any of this. None of this matters. I remember also looking over the edge being like, I don't want to make a scene. And that was like so dark and terrible. And I was like, I gotta go home. Like, this is not okay. And then we were walking home and I was like, this is it. I'm saying goodbye. Sorry, it got real heavy real quick, Amy, but to move along to post attempt, I just remember I felt this, again, I kept telling you, I felt this heavy, empty nothingness, and out of nowhere, it sounds so bizarre, but it felt like it all just like was lifted out of my body and this lightness came in, and this idea of, it's not your time yet, and it is you're meant to do something else. It is not your time yet. Let's get up, let's start over tomorrow. Like, this feeling, this lightness, and that permission almost to like lean in to the good and like let me guide you away from this heaviness. I don't know if any of that makes sense.
Wow.
But
No, it does make sense, actually.
that's what happened. I picked myself up. No one had come yet. I did send a text. I did have a letter, and nobody came yet. And I was like, all right, like, whatever. I went into my bedroom. I locked the door because I was like, oh my God, what's going to happen next? Because I have 8 to 10 people I texted, and if they start coming in, I'm really embarrassed. So I'm going to lock my door. I remember laying in my bed in college, no bed frame, no nothing, just a mattress on the ground with some blankets on it. And the first person who came was my roommate / best friend. And I remember she was trying to open the door and she was screaming, Mar. So my girlfriend called me Mar. And she's like, you better open this door. I will knock it down. I'm serious. Like, I will kick this door in. And this is like somebody, she's very faith-based. She is gentle and sweet and kind. And I've never heard panic like this in her voice before. And so I got up, I locked the door, and she got right in bed with me. And she held and cried with me. And it was nice to cry and to feel something. There was a lot of guilt and shame that followed that, because I just sent up this mass text of goodbyes, and people started trickling in and checking in and crawling into bed and holding me and being like, damn, I gotta look these people in the face now and move on and pick up the pieces and swallow the pride the last ounce of pride I had, and then I said goodbye, and now I gotta like redo the work. What I recognize now though is that didn't matter to them. That was all me and like the negative self-talk I had. What it was for them is that I was strong enough to not do what I wanted to do. I was strong enough to pick myself back up. I recognize that now, obviously, but dang, girl, was it, the pill I swallowed those first couple months, oh my God, I just remember it sucking so much.
Yeah, and one thing you say over and over, and you and I consider you a friend, even though like we've never met in real life. We met on Clubhouse, which if you don't know what Clubhouse is, Google it. But one thing that I've heard you say over and over that I want to speak right now in the middle of this interview is no one cared until that moment. And we're going to have the faith conversation later, but for you to mention to me that the person that crawled in bed with you does have a faith, in God.
Mhm.
I would go so far as to say that if we picked up the phone on this live podcast, if you have her phone number, and by the way, we're probably only talking about 5 to 7 years ago that this happened, she would say, I was praying for you. Even when I was holding you, I was praying for you. And the initial conversation that you and I had, you said, Amy, I just wanted somebody to hug me. I just wanted somebody to care. I just wanted somebody to ask. And she did that for you. And in the middle of this podcast, looking at you on this Zoom, both of us crying, I want you to know I care. And I'm going to care for a long time because you're on your journey and we're on this mental health advocacy together. But you're on your journey and I'm here for it. I'm here for it.
Thank you. Thank you,
So,
Amy. I appreciate that.
and you are on this podcast because, as you know, because you're awesome first, but as you know that April is Child Abuse Awareness Month, but some childhood abuse, like mine, like the ones we hear on the news, is obvious. Yours not so much, though. Can you speak to my listeners about the importance of not assuming that abuse happens in a one-parent, socioeconomically unstable home? That's the first question. And that's the first question. Let me leave it there first, and then I'll ask you, because that's the assumption. When you say I was gifted with two parents, when you're a famous speaker one day and an advocate for people like you, I want that to be your tagline. I really do.
I think that's the unique
I
part
was
of my
gifted
story.
two parents.
Absolutely. Because I think about it, and that was what kept me from any of the work, right? Because I was like, well, it should be enough. I have two parents. We have a roof over our head. I have food, and I have clothes on my back, and it should be enough. And any time that I questioned my parents, they'd be like, there's worse out there. There's kids who are starving. People are homeless. They would just tell me about the worst things that were out there. And so I never thought what was mine was worse. Not only that, but I grew up in a really small town where everyone else was related. We were the outliers. We moved from Texas up to Rhode Island. Everyone else was related. They had these big Italian families, yada, yada, yada. So, nobody thought to ask how I was doing. Nobody thought twice. They just assumed everything was taken care of because everyone else was minding their own business in their big old families.
Right.
So I think because I had two parents with jobs, and with a roof over my head and clothes, and I never looked disheveled. I never was like this textbook, like these are the warning signs and this is what a harmed child looks like. The media and the news depicts a child whose clothes are tattered and they're malnourished and all of that. No, I didn't look that. In fact, I was nourished. When I was younger, my parents, this is going to sound so odd, they gave me Coke and milk mixed together and my teeth rotted. Wow. To the point, and actually the main picture for Remaking Marley, my teeth are rotted in it, and unless you zoom in, you wouldn't know, but I didn't smile. I never smiled because I was so embarrassed by my teeth. And I just remember being they would give me chips, and they would give me McDonald's. They gave me all these terrible foods just to quiet me down because I was hungry. But it wasn't until college, honestly, until I became an adult, that I understand the importance that vegetables and fruits have to your mental health. I didn't realize drinking water was so vital to my mental health. And I know that sounds bonkers, but I grew up with one of my parents eating turtles, M&Ms, and drinking Mountain Dew every day, all day. And all I had to do was can I have money to go to McDonald's? And that was it. And that is in alignment with inner city children who don't have access to money or great food sources. But again, it wasn't because we couldn't have access to it. It's because there was a lack of caring. And that's kind of my story. There's just a lack of caring. And that's what children need. People think children, I hate when people say, let them cry it out. I hate when people say kids are being manipulative. These are learned behaviors. Children have needs, and those needs are really just to be loved, seen, and heard. And that's a textbook phrase, loved, seen, and heard. But it's just so crazy that because my needs otherwise were met, nobody wanted nor cared about those other three things for me. So
yeah. Your answer to that question would be open your eyes, ask questions, care.
Or even just don't assume, go into every person that you talk with or look at, or especially children, and just assume that they need you right here in that moment. And they need you to hear them and see them and love them. Every time I see a child, I don't care if their parent just cussed me out, because I work at an ER, pediatric ER. It doesn't matter if they just cuss me out. It doesn't matter if it's the sweetest people ever. Every child that I see, I sit and I give them at least 5 minutes that I can. And I talk with them and I ask them something that is their favorite thing. And I try my best to smile at them. The masks make it hard, but I try my best to connect with them, even for those 5 minutes, because that can mean the world to one kid.
It's so true, because as I learned this morning when I interviewed somebody that you and I both know, was talking about the importance of, even in that 2 to 3 year old range, just for development of the brain, is holding and nurturing people. So I think that's such a good word, is to not, actually, the word here is treat children like children, regardless of whether they're millionaire children or they come from the slums. Treat them like children. They all have the same needs, because they are not, and I repeat, they are not little adults. They don't have the vocabulary to tell you what's going on. And as a matter of fact, you didn't talk, right? You were labeled as a special needs child, when in fact you were being abused to the point where you had welts on your body. What do you wish that the adults would have done for you then?
It's so crazy. I think back to these mini memories.
For little Marley. I want to rephrase that. What do you wish the adults would have done for the little Marley that made the assumption that we are trying to get people to stop making?
I wish that they had known that a happy, normal child would be interactive and excited and wanting to learn and like just be. And I was anything but. I was isolated. When I did talk, I stuttered. I went into speech therapy classes. I was just so withdrawn. My hair was nappy because I didn't let anyone touch my hair. Like all of the things that are somewhat textbook and somewhat are just this child is not interacting. That's like a developmentally important thing. Like I just wish someone was like, honey, do you feel okay? Do you feel safe? Like I just wish they stepped in and knew. And I know it's I hate when I'm like, you should know the warning signs of these things, because it's not always that clear, but like there's something so obvious in human connection and knowing, and just that children, a happy child, you will know, is like just so involved and so present. I think that's what it is. Children are so present in the moment. They don't care about tomorrow. They don't care about anything else. They just want to be and do and learn and love. And I was anything but those things. So I just wish an adult was like, what makes you you? What do you care about? What's your favorite color? Just
what do you like?
Silly like that. What do you like? What's your favorite food? Just stuff that like made me feel like I mattered. And so that way I could use my little voice. I don't know.
No, I love that. It makes perfect sense, especially when we bring it into the frame that you're a pediatric ER nurse. I just envision you like, I don't have children, but if I had children, I would want you to be their nurse, because you are nurturing. And the fact that you've been able to do that is crazy. One of the things that I didn't mention in my intro that I do want to validate for you is, so your dad, who was the one that physically abused you, left you, and you said to him to marry somebody else, and actually left the state and left the area. And you said, why can't we be enough? And his answer to that question doesn't matter, but why can't we be enough? That is the heart of a child. Children don't ask to be brought into this world. It is our responsibility to love them into adulthood, so that wounded children don't become wounding adults. You and I are sitting here as having been wounded children. Hopefully we aren't wounded adults. But here's where I'm so excited for the listeners to hear, because we're going to talk about some stuff as it pertains to your story and Child Abuse Awareness Month. But as you have done the same thing that I have seen so many people do, you've turned your pain into purpose. You have a blog and a movement called Remaking Marley, and all of that will be in the show notes. But I want you for a second to tell us what you mean by Remaking Marley. Let's start with that, and then I have a follow-up question. When you open that blog up, Remaking Marley, tell me what your thought process was behind that.
Ooh. So the whole thing that came with Remaking Marley, the whole start of that was because for the longest time, I kept saying, I know these really crappy things happen to me, but it doesn't feel real anymore. And people would just like kind of look at me and like be like, okay. And I'd be like, isn't that weird? I'd always say, isn't that weird? Like, all these things happen, but like I feel so disconnected from them. And it wasn't until I'd say that like a year ago, because I've been in therapy since college. And that's like a whole other story of like when I realized I wasn't anxious anymore, and I was like, whoa, this I was going through something, and I sought
One
therapy. But
one of our C's here, just a plug for our C's for the podcast: community, church, and trauma informed counseling. C.
counseling, yes. But I just, in all the years of therapy, I just remember like a year ago, I got out of a relationship. I left him because I realized I didn't know anything about myself. I didn't feel comfortable being alone with myself. And going through that process, I had to look inward, which was so uncomfortable because I got messages my entire childhood of invalidation and just like how crappy I was. And so it was hard to look at myself in the mirror. And I remember the one day that somebody had mentioned to me, like, who's important to you? Like, who do you want to talk to? Who do you want to look back on and make something meaningful? And I was like, I think I want to reconnect with my younger self. And I think I need to honor her because she was a warrior. And I kept saying, like, and this is more about dating, like, what do I want in a relationship? I was like, I want a guy who's proud of me. And I had to be like, I want to be proud of me. How do I get to be proud of me? Well, I'm proud of my younger self. Oh, that's Marley. Oh my goodness. And I wish that somebody took a picture of when I realized these things. And in my head, I remember thinking, because I work with children, thinking of picking up 6-year-old me and the weight of what that felt like and putting her on my hip and just like hugging her and being like, God, that is so special. That is so beautiful that me as an adult now, get to be the adult that I needed. How freaking cool is that? Because I'm so proud of myself. I am, I have a job and a place and a roof over my head, and I did this because I got myself here. So I don't know. Sorry, I went on a bit of a tangent, but.
So Marlena, as I just mentioned to you, we met on Clubhouse and we're both mental health advocates. But you, like many people, and again, I had already repeated this, have turned your pain into purpose. And it's a really cool project that you have named Remaking Marley. And I would love for you, since this is the month that we are highlighting, we're highlighting awareness of child abuse. I would love to know the idea behind Remaking Marley, and particularly because of the month of April. So could you tell us that story about how you're turning all of that pain into this amazing purpose that we'll continue to talk about through the podcast? But I'd love to hear how that came to be.
Yeah, absolutely. The funny thing is, I never told you this, but I actually called it The Remedy to start. It was a play on words because I'm a nurse, and I figured like remedies were a good, like almost like bits of information to give people, because I really wanted to educate people about the harm of child abuse and like how it affects adults. But it just like didn't sit well with me. But for some reason, I really loved the letter R, and I don't know why. Like the way it's written, the way it sounds, I don't know. I just loved it. So I actually played around and I was like, well, what's my what do I want to do? And I was like, okay, I want to reconnect people with not only their healing, but their inner child. Because for me, when it all clicked for me was because I kept saying to other people, like, I know my past happened. I know it really sucked, but like, it doesn't feel real. It doesn't feel normal. I know I've said that to you a few times, but I realized I really needed to connect the two, because I really needed to honor my past. I needed to honor where I've been, and that way I can really appreciate it. Because and a lot of this came from like I got out of a relationship. I was trying to figure out my life because I left a guy. That's a whole other story. But I left him because I forgot who I was. I didn't know who I was, what I valued, all these other things. I had this whole like deep dive on who the heck am I. And one of the things was like, well, what's the big thing that I want out of relationships? And I was like, I just want someone to be proud of me. I was like, well, am I proud of myself? Do I even know what I have to offer? And that's when I was like, I always say it doesn't feel real, the things I've gone through. Is it because I'm just like not honoring them and appreciating them? I'm a nurse and I work with children. I know like the weight it feels like to pick up children. And so I had this moment where like I envisioned me picking up younger me, like adult me picking up younger me, putting her on my hip and holding her. And Man, that's like the best feeling in the world. Like if I could give that to every single person, this aha moment, everything would have been worth it. Everything I'd gone through would have been worth it. And so I was like, okay, well, what does that look like? Well, what would I call this? And I was like, oh my God, I'm rewriting my story. Oh my God, I'm retelling the things that harmed me to help other people. And I kept coming across this prefix of re. And I was like, wow, I'm remaking myself. In fact, I'm remaking Marley. I'm remaking younger me so that way she can show up in this world that I live in now and we can really connect with each other. So that's kind of how Remaking Marley came to be. It sounds really cute as well, but this idea of re being a prefix and how strong it is, literally the prefix means to go back. And so Therapy 101 asks us, we have to go back and we have to process the things that happened to us so that way we can show up a little bit better now. And so that's what I'm asking people to do. I'm not asking you to shame your past. I'm not asking you to like understand completely. I'm just asking you to take a step back and really take a moment to re-examine and to reprocess the things you've gone through so that way you can show up a little bit better for your own inner child. For me, it's Marley.
Right. And it's so funny because listeners probably notice us going from Marlena to Marley, and then we're doing that on purpose because you also bring into this process, and we're going to put all of the links and everything to your blog and the initiatives that we have for this month in the show notes. But before I get to the last question of the interview, I wanted to ask you to, because this has helped me, because in Remaking Marley right now, as a matter of fact, you have now when this podcast drops, I think the series will be over, but you have a series that will be on your blog, and it's a reparenting series. And so that has really got me thinking, like, okay, if I was a kid, what would I tell myself to do for self-care and things like that? But I wondered if you could briefly explain to us what you mean when you say reparenting, back to that re prefix. What do you mean by that in your work in the Remaking Marley?
For me, reparenting is an opportunity not to judge the things that have happened to me, but to fill in the gaps and the lacks. And so what I mean by that is I am an adult now. And fortunately, I'm successful to a lot of people. Like I have a job, I have an apartment, I support myself. I have all the things that younger me needed. Like I am the adult that younger me needs. And so I just think it's so amazing that I get to step in and I get to choose how those things affected me. And in doing that, I can give those messages back to younger me, and I can kind of talk through myself like, yeah, that did really suck. Feeling so small, so unwanted. Yeah, that was really hard, because the messages up until then I got were like, you're too sensitive, you're asking for too much, like all these really harmful messages. But now I am the adult that gets to help influence and encourage and love on Marley. And so I just think it's so powerful that we have an opportunity. This is kind of like, you've heard me say this, but for all of your listeners, like I've learned in reparenting this phrase, and it's really helped me kind of readjust how I approach things and how I process things. But I have an opportunity to choose blank. So reparenting is I have an opportunity to choose myself. I have an opportunity to choose how I let these experiences affect me. And I have an opportunity to choose how I'm going to process them and be better and show up a little bit better. Because, I mean, at the end of the day, like, what do I want my life to be? I want it to be something that I presently experience and enjoy, and experience so much fight or flight and so much survival mode. And so we didn't really get a lot of being present. That wasn't really like appreciated as a child. And so now I'm an adult and I'm realizing it's just so much more beautiful to enjoy each day. And how can I explain that to younger me? How can I make all these connections? And so, yeah, I think reparenting, it's been such a cornerstone in the work I'm doing, because it's how we connect back with our inner child. We get to be the adults that younger us needed.
Yeah, well, I have to tell you that it's really made me think. I currently have this 30-day challenge, and I have no idea what I'm going to do today, where I go do childish things that I never got to do. And so you are making a difference, and I want you to know that. Okay, so here's where I really wanted to have a few minutes more of a conversation, because you and I have talked about this a little bit around the block and all of those kinds of things. But I'm going to frame the question like this, and I want you to answer it and let's see what happens. This is literally, I don't know what happens, but you've already contributed to the mission of this podcast by talking about the importance of community, by talking about the importance of trauma-informed counseling. My other C is church, which church means something different to everybody, but the cornerstone, who I call the star of my story, is Jesus. As you know, I am a Christian. I am not ashamed to say, though, that God confuses me sometimes. Through all of my trauma, sometimes I still land at the same place of not necessarily understanding that, still fully believing in God, that these bad things happened. And so I was wondering if you would mind telling me about your journey, because I've been in church my whole life and I still have questions, but I do land back at believing in God. But would you mind sharing with us your journey with faith/God? You've used the word the universe a couple times. And I want you to be as real and raw as you feel comfortable, fully knowing that this is a conversation to help people that listen to this podcast ask the same question. Where was God for little Marley? Where is God for the kids that you come in the ER now? I would love for you to, as candidly and raw and real, and make sure that I don't need to put an E on this podcast for explicit, tell me about the struggles that you have with your understanding of God, who I absolutely will go to my grave calling the star of my own story.
Where to begin? Well, my father practiced multiple religions before I was born. And so when I was born, him and my mom made an intentional point to not get me baptized. And so in my little sweet hometown full of Italians, everyone was Roman Catholic, baptized, all of that. And so I didn't really know anything else besides what they would tell me when they went to like CCD and all of that. And I just like didn't get it too, because as a child, and I think I already said this, but like, I just kept thinking, why is this happening to a child? Who would let this happen to a child? Why are no adults coming to save me? Why is there not somebody who cares? And like, how could there be a quote unquote God who everyone like puts all this time and energy into exist and allow little old me to go through what I was going through? And, you know, even as a kid, my dad, like, we lived by the ocean, and so at night sometimes we'd sit in the backyard and we would just listen to the waves. And I learned about meditation super early on, about like practicing presence and breath work. But even throughout high school, I just like didn't really care. I didn't really get it. I wouldn't call myself an atheist by any means, because I do genuinely think that there's a beautiful way in how everything comes together, and how, like, you know, the grass grows and the wind blows and like all of that beautiful stuff. But I don't know that I would put my finger on it as God. I think I just have a hard time thinking that there is one male figure who oversees everything. I don't know. I struggle with that. I think of it more as like the universe has my back, because I remember there were times when I was younger and my mom, she, besides having mental illness, she was also an alcoholic. And, you know, she would drive drunk, and I would just be like, all right, universe, if you let me get home safely today, I promise I'll try and be a better kid tomorrow. Like, I just remember there were times where I've told you this, but for your listeners to know, like, my mom would be drunk and yelling, and I would hide in the closet, and I would just say, okay, world, or whoever's listening, like, I just got to get through this. Tomorrow will be a better day. I remember, too, as a kid, if I had a good day, I would have anxiety attacks because I knew bad was coming. Like, I always thought about this balance happening. About if I had a bad day, I'd be happy. I'd be like, okay, it can only get better. If I had a good day, I'd be like, when's the shoe going to drop? That was my everyday life. And I was like, well, God wouldn't let me do this every day. Like, God lets joy happen to people on holidays. God lets families be together and brings people together, but yet no adults checking in on me. So I really struggled with it. And when I got to college and everything happened, when I experienced that moment of, like I said, it was a very like emptiness, no feeling. I don't know if you or any of your listeners have ever seen Haunting of Hill House, but one of the siblings, her gift is like she can touch people and kind of like get their past or their character. And there's a part in the show where like she actually touches someone who's dead, so she has emptiness and nothingness. That's what it felt like. Like, I had just absolute nothingness. And then when that moment came of, like, it felt like it was being lifted out of my body, and this message of it's not your time yet. You're meant to do more. I don't know that it was a father figure. It felt that way. It felt like masculine energy in like a sense. But I just remember I remember that being like, whoa, is this God talking to me? Like, is this what people are talking about when you are in your darkest hour? Like this light, this lifting, this I've got you and I'm here to pick you up, my child. Like, is that what it is? And
Yes, I will answer. Let me answer that question for you. Yes, that, like, I've got chills right now, and this is the part of this conversation that I didn't know what was going to happen. I've been in church my whole life, and so to some degree there was not some of the confusion that, even though, I was also being abused, I was educated. But I will say to you that when you were describing to me what you felt that night when you laid in the bed with your friend who does have faith, and I don't know what kind of, whether it, we're not going to get caught up in religion, but what I do know is that in my opinion, the fact that you just, something lifted from you was God of the God of the universe. And so the universe has always showed up for you, but I believe that who really showed up for you in those times, in the light times and the dark times, was God. Now that's confusing. And that's why I hold those rooms, where was God in your darkest hour, because it's confusing. It's, God, if you are all knowing and all there and all powerful and you can do anything, then why was I in a closet? Why did I want to end my life? Why did I want to do that? And I do that in my own life, Marlena. I just say, where were you? Even today when we couldn't get Zoom to work, could you just make this work? But what I would just love to encourage you, I'm not here to preach to you because I'm going to be with you for the long haul. I already told you I'm here for it. And what I want my life to do, there's a song that we play that we'll be playing on the outro of this podcast called Marked by You. And the song is, I want my life to be marked by you. I want my life to be marked by you, God. And you said something earlier when you said, if one person has helped because of my story, then I don't think you said it's all worth it, but I don't understand God. I don't understand where God was for little Marley. I don't understand where God was for little Amy. I don't understand where God is in a global pandemic. But I know that in my almost double your years of life, not quite double, but almost double your years of life, I have asked these questions that you're asking. And the only place I landed was the only thing that made sense, when it was like, you know what? It's okay to say, I don't understand. But something that night in that college, I'm assuming it's a college dorm room or an apartment, something that night and the days that came after, this feeling of light and levity, for lack of a better word, that you felt, I fully believe is the God of the universe. I'm not here to preach to you. You're literally the first person on my podcast that has said to me what you just said. And that's why I wanted to have this conversation, because I ain't going anywhere. Neither is my podcast. And I believe, Marlena, that the reason why I am still alive today is because of the God of the universe, because Jesus, who's the star of my story, yesterday we just celebrated Easter. And when you think about Jesus dying on the cross, and I don't know how much of that story you actually know, probably with a little Roman Catholic background, you know quite a bit. But did you know that right before he actually died on the cross, God the Father had to turn his back on his son? Now, there's a whole theological reason for that I won't go into. But when I really struggle about, where is God? Why would God let little Marley be locked in a closet? Why would God do any of these things? I don't have the answer to that question, but here's what I would say. I want you to keep asking the questions, because you will get answers. And I don't know what else to say to you except for that I want to be in this role as a big sister in your life, and I want you to look at my life, and I pray that it will be a life marked by God, that you can look at me and go, I've listened to a couple of other podcasts, or I've read the book that Amy finally wrote, and there's only one way that she can still be standing, and it is because of I'm going to use the word higher power, which isn't my favorite words, but in my belief system, it is God. Do I understand it? No. Do my listeners understand it? No. But so many of them needed to hear what you just said. I don't know. Doesn't that sound like fair? Like, are you willing to? Are you willing? And and I think you are, because you just said I'm not an atheist. But I just want you to know that I'm here for whatever's next for you.
Well, I don't know if I told you, but I did get baptized in college because I was really. I was like so sure so after everything happened, I was like, well, I have nothing else to lose. I'm going to church every Sunday. And I did that for the next 3 years of my life. I went every Sunday. I had a small community. When I started dating my now ex, we would drive down from Philly down to my little church in Delaware. Like, I was really committed. I have stepped back since, not only because like in nursing, I've seen really horrific things, like, children who get cancer who are like a month old, or like just the adversities that I see happen. I'm like, how could like a God let these things happen? And I think I just realized now, like, it's not everything is for me to understand. Not everything is to have an answer, but there is a lesson. I feel that there is in everything. Like, there was a reason I went through what I went through, because I'm here to be a voice, to be courageous and vulnerable, because other people need someone to do that, just like somebody was kind and courageous for me. So I go back and forth. I believe in church. I like sometimes will just like read different scriptures just to like understand, like, okay, this is the Bible. To me is a big story, which I know is like kind of the point of the Bible, for lessons to be taken from, and that's the part I appreciate. I just don't know why I still struggle. And like you said, I'm going to keep asking the questions to the universe and to God about like why we are who we are and what we're doing. But I know ultimately what I take away is just appreciation, that I have been gifted this opportunity to walk this life. I have been gifted my health, 2 legs, 2 arms, breathing on my own, and health. And I don't know, it's really powerful no matter who gave it to me. But I know that there is a greater power that helps me walk in what I'm doing, and they help me understand my alignment and what I'm supposed to be doing, my purpose. And so,
well, it's
really powerful.
You need to know that you are so special. And if you were to, and I'm not just saying that because we're friends, but you are so special. And the next time you do want to pick up a Bible, I want you to read Psalm 139 is one of my favorite chapters in the Bible. But I know that I'm not going anywhere. I just want you to know that you are amazing. And I say it on every podcast. You are so seen. You're so known. You're so loved. You're so heard. You're so valued. And this world isn't ready for you, because you are going to make a difference in this world for children. You already are. And so as we end the podcast, I would love for you to tell people where they can contact you, and where they could find your blog, and then talk to them about the Instagram challenge you have right now as you are raising money for Child Abuse Awareness Month, and then we will go from there.
Alrighty. So remakingmarley.com is my blog. I also have my Instagram, which is at re.making.marley. And there's where I have my photo challenge. I just released it to Facebook too, but I don't really have it in me to run a Facebook account or Twitter account and an Instagram, all through Remaking Marley. But Instagram is mainly where Remaking Marley stuff is. The photo challenge, though, is I'm asking everyone to post a photo of themselves as children, and in that post, writing a letter to yourself. Now, this can be a letter of like encouragement or appreciation, or just like, it could be literally one sentence, like, I see you, or I love you. It can be as long or short as you want, but my point is that I just want you to take a moment to reflect and to reconnect with younger you. And in doing so, I'm hoping that people will understand that like we all need validation, and we all can give ourselves validation in some sense, especially now as adults, to our child selves, if you will.
Perfect.
I'm also asking, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say perfect. Yeah, go ahead. You were also asking.
No, I was just going to tell them to do hashtag no excuse for child abuse. I think that's really powerful, and that connects actually everyone who's doing this challenge, not just me and my photo challenge, but anyone who's raising awareness for Child Abuse Awareness Month. That's a big hashtag that I found that's useful.
And I will do the same. I will share it all in the show notes. This episode will drop in the month of April, and we both have committed to $100. I am going to donate $100 to Prevent Child Abuse, which is a national organization, for if we get 100 people to do this. And you're going to donate $100 to, I forgot what you told me. Tell us what it is.
The Philadelphia Children's Alliance. There's actually a sub-organization that specifically works with children who have faced trauma and abuse. I'm just in the works of contacting them, but that is where my $100 will be going.
Okay, perfect. So all of that's going to be in the show notes, guys. Marlena, thank you. I have a feeling we aren't done doing podcasts. I love you, girl. I want you to know that that Jesus loves you too. And I'm not here to preach or to convert you, but the whole purpose of my podcast was because I know that I would not be standing without the star of my story, who is Jesus, and I would be doing a disservice to my faith if I didn't say that. That being said, though, I had very many dark nights of my soul when I wasn't as healthy as you are and asking the questions that you are. And so wherever you land, I know that you have landed in a soft spot in my heart, and you are going to make a difference in this world. And I just love to thank you for coming onto the podcast today and for the initiative that we are really endeavoring to stop this so that we could stop having wounded children becoming wounded adults. And so I just want to thank you for coming onto the podcast today.
Amen to that. I love you too, Amy, and thank you so much for this opportunity. I appreciate you so much.
All right, girl. I will see you around the club. But thank you so much again. And you just keep on remembering that all of those things you are seen, known, loved, heard, and valued. Don't forget that. It's easy to do when you're reminding other people all the time. As usual, I just want to thank you for spending a few minutes of your time with us. Time is the one thing that we are not making more of, and so it is not lost on me what an honor it is that you take the time to listen to this little podcast that just wants to help people. I would also like to thank our guests today. I hope that the powerful story that was brought to your earbuds resonated with you and gave you hope. If it did, I would also be so honored if you would share that podcast with somebody, share the link with somebody that may be helped by the message that you heard today. Also, while you're in your podcast app, would love it if you would hit that subscribe button so that every episode, every 2 weeks, just comes straight to your phone. Also, there is a fun group on Facebook called Wednesdays with Watson. Would love for you to join that, and we will see you over there. All other social media is Amy Watson Author, except for Instagram, which is Author Amy Watson. You can reach me in all the places, usually all at one time. I would love to thank our executive producer, Amy Hyland. She is doing an amazing job with these episodes. And Phil Baker, that's his song, Marked by You, off of his album, Babylon, that you hear playing us out of the podcast. Until I see you in 2 weeks, you know what I'm going to say. Let the healing continue. So let my life glorify